All right, we're here with Peter Thomas, drummer, engineer, songwriter, entrepreneur, and we're going to talk about music and lessons and drumming, music business. And first, I want to ask you, Peter. Thanks for being here. First of all,
oh yeah, my pleasure,
and totally appreciate it. First thing I want to ask you is, how did you get interested in music?
Well, my first connection with music actually happened when, so I was still living in Poland. You know, that's where I grew up. That's where my family's from. And I actually found my dad's old snare drum. My dad played in college. So I was at my grandmother's house just kind of fiddling around in the attic, and I found a snare drum. And I was like, whoa, what's this? And I kind of remember that my dad did play in college, and I remembered I took it home and found some chopsticks. And I mean, we're talking, gosh, you know, this is like 1980 communist Poland. So we had a reel to reel, and somehow I think the one recording that I was able to get was Michael Jackson's Off the Wall. And I literally just had this snare drum, and I put some like foam padding on it, and I had my chopsticks, and I would just put the reel to reel and play Rock With You. I think that was the song, right? Off the Wall, Michael Jackson. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just flapping away. And then of course we immigrated, I was 6 at the time, or 7 when we finally got here. So music kind of left. But then I think I was in 5th grade, and they had your typical school band, and they're like, hey, who wants to participate? And I was like, oh, I want to do this. And at first I wanted drums, of course, because I remember I was, banging on that drums back in Poland. But then I think they didn't have any more room. I think all the drum spots were taken. So I think I was supposed to play trumpet. I was like, okay, fine, I'll do this. And then like a week before we were supposed to start, I guess a drum spot opened up, and I was like, I'll take it, you know? And it was like your typical 5th grade, you just get your snare drum, and you're just, quarter notes, 8th notes, and all that stuff. And I think the teacher, the band director, he came like once a week, and he used to teach this was a place in South San Francisco called Bernstein Music. Yeah, so that's where he was from. Yeah, it was cool. And then it just kind of evolved, I think. So at first it was, you just get a snare drum line. And then I think in 6th grade, what do we get? I think we got Huey Lewis, like Hip to Be Square or something. And I remember they had a cymbal part, and then they had a snare drum part and a bass drum part. And I was like, wait a minute. That guy, how's this going to work? And the guy's like, oh no, that's for drum set. And I was like, oh, okay. So, I had to set up the cymbal and the snare drum, and the other guy was going to play the drum set. But I was like, oh, wait a minute. There was like, this hand's doing this and this hand's doing that. And then, of course, that just kind of evolved into like, okay, now I want to get a drum set. And I think that was 6th grade. And then, I got a drum set for Christmas. And it was amazing. It's like now my dad bought a total Ringo Starr Ludwig kit. And at the time, of course, after a few years, like, I want more drums. So it turned into me selling that and buying like a CB700. It's like, what an idiot. You sold a... But when you're in 6th grade, you don't know. I mean, you're just like, I want rototoms. I need more drums. This is a 4-piece kit. I mean, you don't know any better. So looking back on it, like, oh, such an idiot. Should have kept that drum set. I swapped in that for a CB700. This is that. All right. Don't like, you should make a video of like, this is what not to do. Don't buy a Ludwig and turn it in for a CD. To all the students out there, if you buy a nice vintage kit, don't sell it. So
So just talking about the band program,
Yeah.
you grew up in South City, right?
No, I grew up in Mountain View.
Mountain View. Okay.
Yeah.
So was it concert band, symphonic band? Looks like you're talking about marching band. Were you in jazz band? Like there's different school programs. Were you involved in? It sounds like you're in elementary school when you started fourth grade when they ask you to be included in the band program, and then going through junior high school and high school. Were you involved in the different band programs at school?
Yeah, so I started, I think it was fifth grade, so fifth, and it was a Catholic school, and I was there fifth and sixth grade. I did go to another school in sixth grade, and I think this guy, he would, like I said, he would come once a week or twice a week, and I think he was doing all the Catholic schools, and this is like Mountain View, Los Altos. And then in seventh and eighth grade, I switched out to the public school system. And it was just mostly like, there was no jazz band. It was, I don't even know, I think concert band, like your standard, trumpets. I don't remember if we had violins. So, we put on your seventh and eighth grade was the same thing. We put on the typical Christmas concert, maybe like a springtime concert. And then in high school, I went to Mountain View High School. That was a public school. And then I did marching band. Sophomore year, I did it 1 year. Looking back on it, I should have stayed with it. I think it would have benefited me a lot more. I loved the playing part. I never liked marching. The whole, go this way. It just never, but you're in high school. I was a bit of an idiot. You think you know things that you don't. But I did do. I did jazz band. I think there was like the A level jazz band, and then there was the B level one. And I think I did the B level one sophomore year, and I think I did the A level one junior and senior year. And there was a symphonic band that I did 1 quarter, but again, I didn't stay with it. And I probably, again, if I had to go back to high school, I would have participated a lot more in those programs. But I think I was also playing sports too. And it's just one of those things. So
were you, when you started getting into drum set and you were in, I guess, high school, did you have a practice routine? Were you taking private lessons? Do you still have a practice routine now? So it's kind of like past and present. So did you have a private teacher that you do a weekly lesson and then you prepare it, then you go play that lesson for your teacher, and then, he moves you to the next level and so on with drum set? Was there anything like that happening in high school?
Well, I think drum set started, and that was in sixth grade. So I remember the Christmas of sixth grade was the first drum set. And then when I did buy the CB700 drum set, the guy who I bought it from, he had a drum teacher that I started with. It was, his name was Craig Botanides. I think he was in Sunnyvale or Mountain View. And we had the Funky Primer and then a couple other books. And it was like your standard, okay, here's do page 12. And you just do as many as you can. And then, of course, I started with you. I think I probably, with you, I was sophomore, junior, and senior, I think. So, and of course, we did our thing. As far as a practice, it was always about preparing the lesson. I remember with Funky Primer, I always tried to beat the record of, I was able to play 12 12 patterns, and then, okay, see if I can do 13 this time and stuff like that. I always played, I always was, I would work on my lesson. I would play along to the radio or to the records. As far as, I think, going past high school and going to college and stuff like that, I've always been a very organized person. I always feel that I have OCD, but it's like good OCD, where I'm very methodical, and even the people I work with are like, yeah, you're always prepared. You always have all your stuff ready. I'm very organized about it. So, it's evolved from, gosh, in your 20s and your 30s. I think at this point, it's always about asking myself, what's the point of, why are you doing this? What's the goal here? I think as you look at time management and you think about all these things that you want to do and you have to do, it's always about like maximizing, like what am I using my hour for? Because like I've wasted hours doing stuff that just meandering, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with but I think just asking myself the proper questions of, what am I trying to achieve here? What am I trying to get better at? What's my goal with being a musician? Of course, if I have to prepare for a gig, I'll just focus on learning tunes. So at this point, what is my practice routine today? I also play guitar. I do. So I focus on, there's so many other things that I do. It's like I'm focusing, I try to play the guitar, and I do some online guitar courses. Piano, same thing. I have some online stuff. I just recently started doing voice lessons too, online as well, just to help hear things better in my head as far as notes. I also do a lot of online. I'm a Pro Tools guy. I've been using Pro Tools for 20 years, and my Pro Tools chops are really pretty good. But I've been doing Logic. I really want to, just Logic for production is a little bit easier. For work, I mostly use Pro Tools. And then I do have an Excel spreadsheet, so all of these things, like, there's only so much time left in a day to do anything, taking care of all these things. So just trying to make sure, even if it's 20 minutes, even if it's picking up the guitar for 20 minutes, I'll just do that. And for drums right now, I could tell you I do try to do an hour a day. And honestly, drums for me are more, this isn't where my income, my main bread and butter is Disney, working for Disney, but I still do gigs, I still do recordings, and it's mostly about touching the instrument, being in touch with it, and just being familiar with it. And then also, it's a very centering process for me. Just sitting down and making yourself play with a metronome for 20 minutes. When I say metronome, I'm not talking about like, I'll throw up a loop, One of my things that I've been doing recently is that, on my little Excel sheet, I just say, okay, today, half an hour, I call it free, where I'll just start at, I'll throw up a tempo, be like, all right, 82, I'll just increase and say, and I kind of like, I actually make little limitations. And speaking of Mike Lessons, he was talking about like, okay, let's say you just say, I'm gonna put myself in a little bit of a box, because sometimes like having too many possibilities actually is crippling. So if you say, okay, I'm going to trade fours with myself, but in the fours, I can only do this thing. I'm not allowing myself to be like, I'm just going to do mad scientist stuff. And that's really good, just to kind of, it's all about also taking the mental focus and really putting it in a structure. I did do this. I watched it. I think his name is Todd Schuckerman, right? Is that his name? He plays for Styx. He did a cool thing on Drumeo and he has this Rosetta Stone thing, which I kind of took and blew it up for myself. Where actually, I remember we used to do the that Gary Chafee, the fat back exercises. I think I did too.
Yep.
So I've taken it, and he expanded it a lot. So it's like I do it, and this has helped me so much with, you know, it's all about centering yourself. It's just about that core of like just feeling it. And so, you know, I've got my like left hand lead with the right foot, left hand lead with the right foot, left hand lead with the left foot, and all these different permutations. And then eighth notes, quarter notes, offbeat eighth notes, 16th note patterns, paradiddles, the King Kong, Garibaldi beat, all of these different things are just like trying to work on all these different permutations. And then right now, I mean, actually, after we're done, I'm recording a song for somebody. Somehow I've gotten into the Omaha, Nebraska circle. I'm doing drum tracks for people in Omaha. I don't know, but it works. So I act if I'm recording a country song. And so I've been working on, it's all about, you know, it's about creativity for me. I don't think I've ever been I'm not a flashy drummer. I've never been like, I don't think I could do a drum clinic. You know, I don't have enough chops to like bedazzle people for days. And I don't think that's the way my brain works, but I'm very much interested in, I mean, I think about this song that I worked on last night a little bit and over the weekend. It's a simple country song. I mean, there's nothing technical about it, but I also think about, you know, taking this simple song and just doing something with it where it makes it go to that next level. And that to me is, you know, creativity and art, and trying to take something that is basic and figure out how to make it work, and let the simple fills, little things like that, and then making sure that it sounds good. It's the proper tone. You know, you're giving it that Nashville country sound. So yeah, I almost feel like all of this stuff is a master thesis that I will never finish. You know, it's just, I don't know. I mean, my goal is to play it till I'm dead. and a lot of times, I mean, I have thought about, you know, I have friends of mine that are in the production video game world, and they say like, man, you still play in bands? Like, why you still do that stuff? I'm like, I mean, when I say I don't have to, it's not a source of income I mean, it's a supplement income. So, but it just makes me better as a person. So, it's just continuing. Even when I leave the drums for a week or two and I come back, I'm always like, oh yeah, you know, some people do yoga. I play the drums. That's the way I look at it.
Just kind of touching on the band thing.
Yeah.
You know, how and when did you start playing and recording with bands? Because I know when I was teaching you, you had started to play with a band, and I remember called Clockwork.
Yeah.
I remember I came to one of your gigs, and oh
my God, that's right. At the coffee shop.
Yeah. And I think you were outside or something like that.
We were.
So just, you know, talk about that. And you touched upon, you know, doing, I think I saw something on your site about the Dukes or something like that.
Yeah.
So would you talk a little about starting to play with people? I think that's a good part of music, where you're practicing and then you're taking it to another level by actually performing with people and not just playing with a track. You know, so can you elaborate on how that started and how you continued that?
Yeah. So I think this would have been 7th grade. I think I had, as far as when my beyond the school band, when you start to play with friends, and there was a guitar player friend of mine in 7th grade, and I had a drum set and he had a guitar, and I think we played, that was like my first experience of playing with a person. We played Owner of a Lonely Heart by Yes, and he just played that riff, da, 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 and that's all he could play. And I was like, that's fine, I'll just play this beat forever. And then we played Scorpions Rock You Like a Hurricane. Da, da, da. And we just played the same thing. We just played a riff. We never really played anything beyond that, but that was fine for us. We'll play this riff forever. I think I would have been either a freshman or a sophomore, and I played with a band. I don't know how we met each other. Probably, maybe it was like some magazine, band magazine. Maybe there was an ad in the back, and I think they were from Sunnyvale. They used to come over to my house, and I think at that point I had a Tama Rockstar and just adding pieces. I had a rack so I could just keep. Oh yeah, I'm gonna put that drum there. And it's funny. I cleared out my storage, and there's a box that I found with a bunch of old tapes. I'm looking forward to. And I was like, oh my God, Clockwork Group live at De Anza College. Now I have to just find a tape player. But yeah, I was in. This would have been probably maybe senior year. There was a guy in high school that I played with, Chris Robertson. He was a guitar player, and he met. I'm trying to remember, like maybe I did take a class at De Anza, and we met some people, and we were basically guitar, bass, drums, and then saxophone, and we played a couple of gigs. We played at the Quad during lunch a couple times. We played at One Step Beyond in Santa Clara. That was a big deal. We had to go sell tickets, and there was a VHS recording somewhere. Again, I have to go buy VHS players and cassette tapes to convert all this stuff, because you're in high school, man. You're just like, I thought it was like the biggest thing in the world, where the bass player would bring his bass over, and I played like during the drum solo, like I played on his bass guitar, and it was just like I just annihilated his bass, and I would never allow that to happen. Jesus, I can't believe he let me like just pound away on his bass, like. And then I went to college, but I did half a year at UCLA right away, and then I did come back because it was a Northridge earthquake, and then I ended up back in the Bay Area. So at that point, yeah, I did all my general ed at De Anza and Foothill, and then I just started playing with blues bands, just jazz bands. I played at a church every Sunday. And that was pretty much all through, junior college. I was here for 2 years, and it was a lot. Yeah, like played with some cover bands, and I'd love to hear a recording of some of that stuff. And then I ended up back at UCLA my senior year, and then same thing. You just meet people I played at the jazz band, or combos mostly at UCLA. You just meet people and you form bands outside, and then I had a couple original projects, and then played with some singer-songwriters. I ended up back in the Bay Area in 2001. I played on a cruise ship. That was hilarious. I played before I moved from LA back after UCLA. And that's where I got into the whole production side. I ended up working for a composer, and that's where this whole world of Pro Tools, and I ended up working at a post-production house, Jingle House, but I was still playing. And then when I did, because it's interesting in college, and I'm probably going into, I'm sure your list of questions, I don't know if I'm getting into, this is the segue where I go into question 4 and 5.
Yes, about the college. So you are
okay. I guess, should I just keep going?
Keep going.
Okay, cool. So, in college, a good friend. I played with some amazing people in college, and I was the worst guy. And I like being the worst guy. I like being I like being in a situation where I'm getting my butt kicked. So I was playing with guys who were way better than me, but somehow, I kind of was able to hang with them, and they were very supportive of me. The sax player, he egged me on. He was an older guy, but at the end of college, everyone's like, "Well, what are you going to do now?" It's like, That's the big thing. You get it. You're like, okay, now what do I do? And I mean, that was a whole nother path as far as getting into the whole production thing. But he did say, oh, you should, I do these cruise ship auditions. You should go out and do one. I was like, okay, why not? And I did it. And I guess I scored pretty well. So for the next couple of years, and I still had a pager. So, and I was working for this composer, and then I ended up, from him, I went to this post-production house. But I'd always get these text messages. You're driving, and all of a sudden you get this, you're like, who's this? And of course you have to pull over and get to a payphone. And then they were like, hi, can you be in Florida tomorrow? I'm like, what? Why? They're like, oh, like a 6-month cruise ship contract. And I was like, no, like not. Because I heard horror stories. I heard some like, there's pluses and minuses to it. But the post house that I was working at, I just was ready to leave. The house I was living at, the lease went up. And I was like, you know what? Let's just do it once. Just why not? I mean, I kind of look at life right now like life is to be experienced. And it's even now what I'm doing with this whole, I mean, could I go get an apartment or a house right now? Yeah, but I'm like, wait, I'm going to go live at the beach in Marina del Rey for 3 months. Why not? Life is supposed to be just do stuff. I mean, you only get this one time around. So I was like, let's just do it. So I remember I ended up getting a contract in Europe. We did, and I've been to Europe a bunch of times, even backpacking. So, but it was Barcelona to Istanbul. It was a 12-day run back and forth. So I've been to Venice 8 times, I think. I did sign a 4-month contract. I actually ended up leaving after a couple of months. I didn't enjoy it. I really, it just became very not enjoyable after 2 months. And I was like, I don't enjoy this. This is not fun at all. Also, I don't think it was my thing. I'm not a show drummer. I know what I'm good at. I also know what I'm not good at. I don't think I'm a very good, I'm a decent, I'm a good sight reader, but I don't think I'm sure if I put my time and energy into it, I could do Broadway stuff, but it's just at that point I was like, this isn't my thing. So I ended up taking off. And then, back in the Bay Area, that was the point where I just said, all right, I'm going to leave, go back to the Bay Area. And then from there, I ended up working at a recording studio. I was the house engineer, and I was always playing. Sometimes bands would be a big part, gigging wise, and then other years it'd be pretty minimal, but I was always around the drums in some way. I actually I had one day where I had, for a long time actually, for a couple of years, I had like 10 students on Mondays after work. It somehow happened. My old band director just gave me a bunch of students. I was like, okay, sure, why not? And then, now that project, the Diablo Dukes original thing, and we just kind of, the guys are up north, so that's been a thing. I was playing in cover bands and all sorts of stuff. It's always about, it's a part of me that I will never stop doing, and I enjoy it. And even when I was moved down here last year, we had a monthly gig in San Francisco with this band, and I was driving up there to play a gig that I didn't have to do. The money was but you know what? I remember driving on Thursday night, and I usually get in at like 2 a.m. or something, right? I'd stay with my dad, my family down in Santa Clara. I'm tired. I get in like 2, 3 a.m. Next day I have to work. And then I'd work all day, and then I'm exhausted. And then I'd pack up my drums, go to this place in San Francisco. The load-in was horrible. I'm sure, you got to go through the kitchen, up these stairs, you find parking, like blah, 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 and all this stuff. And I remember during the driving process, the load-in process, you're kind of asking yourself, why am I doing this? I don't have this. I don't need the money. This is purely just something. But then you start to play and you take that first break and you're like, you know what? Yep. and you're tired at the end, you're loading out, you're the last guy, it's you and like the bar guy, and you're loading out drums at 2:30, and it's like, man, I'm glad I did that, you know, and it keeps me young. You know, people meet me, they're like, wow, you seem like younger, you know, and it's like, and I think that's playfulness, you know, and I mean, would I like, you know, I'd love a roadie guy to help me out loading in and out, but I still do it. I still do it just because I think when I play drums, I notice I feel more balanced. When I don't play the drums, it's like my equilibrium as a person is like off, you know, and I think it also keeps me focused on something, you know, and I like it. I like it when like, oh shoot, there's a gig coming up and I got to run through the set. You know, I like to just, even though I've played these songs, I just run through the set just to like, you know, just to get the body kind of used to what it's doing. And now I'm really getting into, you know, playing the guitar, playing keyboards, actually, you know, I'm really trying to get into writing my own stuff just for me. Just to create. I've been doing this thing for the last year where I take an artist and I listen to their discography from top to bottom. Well, from, you know, their earliest all the way up. Because I noticed I was getting into a little bit of a ADD listening. You know, I think now with Spotify, we can just, it's like, next song. You know, we're kind of in this, nobody listens to records anymore. You don't sit down and give attention to something. It's just like on to the next. So I've been doing this thing. And it's been I highly recommend it to anybody really taking the time to, you know, and I've gone from 1 week I did all of Tony Williams' discography and the next week I did Carrie Underwood, you know, and it's just really interesting. So I did, I'm sure you know Marco Minnemann, a German drummer, and I did his. He actually is a guy who puts out albums, like he puts out an album a year, and he does everything himself. He does all his parts, everything. And it was really cool, like listening to somebody like that just create stuff. And I'm sure Marco makes his big money from the Joe Satriani tours and doing, I don't know, I'm sure this stuff like this is just a little income on the side for him. But I just was listening going like, wow, that's so cool to do a record every year and just to make it and put it out there and as a source of creativity. So I think right now that's where a lot of my focus is. I mean, of course, no one's gigging right now, so and who knows when that's going to come back. But yeah, I do miss playing with people. I mean, gosh, last time I played with physical people in a room was, I think it might have been like February, you know? So yeah, who knows when that's going to come back. But in the meantime, these, you know, like doing these tracks for people are actually, it's an amazing thing. I love it. I'd like to get more into it because it's still challenging and it's a great source of extra income too. Why not?
That's pretty amazing. Like all your points there. It's pretty inspiring. Can you talk a little bit about what you took in UCLA and what you were studying and were you doing music on the side? Were you doing music in UCLA? Were you studying recording arts in UCLA? What did you do when you went there? And both, like, you went there for a while, you came back, and then you went back again. What was your major?
So when I got there after high school, I was undeclared. I think the biggest challenge is, you know, at that age of 18 years old, it's trying to figure out what you're trying to do and what you would like to do. So I was undeclared. I know I enjoyed music a lot, but I also wasn't, I think most programs were always symphonic. You know, you have to play marimba, you have to do all this stuff. And that just wasn't my thing. So when I did leave, I thought I was going to go to UC Berkeley. And then after a few years, I think my first year back, I was just doing undergrad, just your GE stuff at community colleges. And I was still playing a lot. You know, like I said, blues bands, cover bands, church bands. And then I think in my mind, I saw UCLA had an ethnomusicology program. So I grew up with this mentality of, unfortunately, and this isn't, I'm not putting it back on my family, but I think a career in the music industry was not something that I grew up with thinking like, oh, you know, something to pursue, you know, something practical, like something that's, oh, you want to do music? Oh my goodness, like that's a bad idea. So I thought, oh, ethnomusicology. My plan was to go work for Peter Gabriel in England. He had a record label called Real World Music. And so I liked the major looked interesting on paper. When I got there, after this would have been my senior year, I came back to UCLA. The jazz department had just started there. Kenny Burrell was there. They were just getting started. We were the first year. So yeah, things were very disorganized on their level in terms of equipment. I mean, the combos were just having a drum set to play on, but that's just, you know, that's the way it was. And I was playing with people in school, playing with people outside of school. You know, you just meet people at school and you just start playing together. I mean, I ended up finishing ethnomusicology. I thought at one point I was going to transfer to political science. Just the department, I didn't understand why I was taking certain classes. But I was also getting tired of school. So I knew that if I switched I was in the College of Arts and Architecture. If I switched to the College of Letters and Science, I'd have to basically put on another year. I did college in 5 years. And I didn't want to do another year. Oh, now I have to go take these set of requirements. So I was like, let's just finish this. I did an internship my last year at Atlantic Records because I thought I was going to go the record company route. That was going to be my path. So I never studied recording. All this stuff, I figured it out on my own. When I got out of school, you know, I went and tried to get a job at a record company. It just didn't happen. And you know, maybe the universe kind of makes things happen and for certain reasons. And but I was still playing. You know, two of my buddies, actually one of my friends that I still play with a lot, he's up in the Bay Area, but down here we had a original trio that we played out with, some other singer-songwriters. But then the whole engineering thing, there was a thing called UCLA Job Track. People that were UCLA alumni posted job listings, and I became an assistant to this composer. He had a big house in the Hollywood Hills. He did jingles, and I just hung out there. I was his, you know, I'd go to Costco for him. I do the whatever you do when you're 23 or 4, whatever age I was, and I remember he had Synclavier. I don't know if you remember Synclavier. That's the old. Synclavier. Is that what I call it? Yeah.
Yeah. The computer. It was a computer. Synthesizer, like state of the art at the time.
Yeah. So it's like that and Fairlight were the big ones, and he had that. And I remember I asked him like, "Hey, can you teach me that?" And I remember he literally had like a big refrigerator size thing. He had to have it in his machine room. And he said, no, don't like see that thing in the corner there. And I was like, whoa, what's that? He's like, that's Pro Tools. Go learn that. And I'm like, thank God. Because if I had gone the other route and learned this ancient recording thing that nobody was using anymore, and during the day, I did projects for him, organized his library, went to Costco. He just gave me like, I'd have to put together demo reels he's like, oh, we're going to send this out to this ad agency. But then at night I would just sit in the corner. I think it was like Pro Tools, I don't know, 2.0 or something. And I just sat down and read the manual, and it was just like, okay, oh, you create an audio track, and then, oh, it's mono. And then I have to make 2 of them and sum it to a bus to make a stereo. It's like these rudimentary things. And then I ended up and then I just realized to myself, like, man, this is going to take forever. And then I remember thinking to myself, like, man, maybe I can do this. And then I ended up getting an internship at Cherokee Studios, which was horrible. I just cleaned bathrooms 6 times a day and never touched a single fader or knob on it. I took some junior college classes and then just kept snowballing after that. Again, I got a job at a post-production house in Santa Monica, and then I was like the production assistant, just did some of my first recording sessions. I was a complete failure. I've been a failure in a lot of things. I would just fake it till I make it. I was like, all right. I remember when I got hired by this recording studio in Mountain View, man, oh my gosh, somehow they made me the head engineer. I have no idea how that happened. And I just faked my way through so many sessions. We had a 2-track in the corner, like a record, because it was like the typical thing. Guy makes millions of dollars in the in the internet. And he decides like, oh, I'm going to build a $3 million recording studio and get into the music business. Surely that's how you do it, right? It's like, all right. So somehow I get that gig, and they had this 2-track in the corner. I didn't know how to I had no idea how to operate it. I've never cut tape in my life. I wouldn't know how to splice tape. So people would say like, hey, so can we use that? And I was like, yeah, it's being serviced. Like we can't, like it's really better if we just go straight to the, they're like, come on. I'm like, nah, man, I think the guy's going to come out next month. So it's fine, man. Trust me, dude. I was like, whew, got out of that one, So yeah, just kind of fake it till you make it. So
getting into, learning all you're kind of learned on your own, learning all the recording and sound design and mixing.
Yeah.
How did you start to get into your occupation that you're doing now, and started to get into writing for video games and jingles and animation and different things? How did that start to happen? How did you go from just kind of messing around and kind of reading manuals and learning things and starting to record people, starting to use Pro Tools, to like people are hiring you to do these major productions at big companies?
So, I mean, if I could trace back the path a little bit, and I'm sure that this is probably something that a lot of students might be asking themselves, like, well, how do you get a job at Disney and how does this happen? And I think a lot of people are like, oh, I want to get into the music industry. What's the path? I think everybody's path is very different and unique. I think if it was that simple, I think we'd be all doing the same thing. But for me, yes, working for the composer, learning bit by bit, taking recording classes. And I was just, I went from the composer to the post-production house. Then when I did move back to the Bay Area, when I was at Foothill College, prior to going back to UCLA, I took a couple recording or music classes at Foothill College, and I was I contacted my old professor there, and I said, "Hey, I'm back in town," and I was living at my parents' house. I think I was 27 or 28. I was just trying to figure out, I was trying to get a studio job or something. I think that the first .com bubble had bursted, so the Bay Area, like nobody was working. And then he asked me, he was like, hey, I'm going to go on sabbatical for a while. Do you want to take over my recording classes? And I was like, dude, I've never taught in my life. Like, I don't think I'm qualified to teach anybody. It's like, oh no, it's fine, man. You were in LA, so like they'll totally love that. And you've done some stuff. I'm like, and I was horrible at it. I really was. Like, I mean, you know how it's like, I kind of knew what a compressor was, but I couldn't explain like what is going on. I was like, well, I know how to set things up and like plug in the microphone and I know what it does, but I had no idea to explain things. And people probably looked at me like, this guy's a buffoon. And I was pretty bad. I mean, I'd love to hear what I sounded like back then. But I also, you know, going back to that old, like being OCD organized, I put together my Excel spreadsheet of like all the production houses in San Francisco. And I would like call places up like, hey, can I drop off? I used the trick, right? You know, like people always like to show off their studios and show off their gear. So I'd always like, oh, hey, I'm going to be in the area. Do you mind if I stop by? You know, like check out the studio. They're like, oh yeah, of course. We'd love to show you the studio. And I think that's like that personal face-to-face thing. So I went to this place. One place I went to was Peermine. Do you know them? They're in San Francisco. It was a recording studio. There's a guy that I'm still friends with to this day, Matt Donner. And we met, and I dropped off my resume. And at that point, you know, oh, you worked at Primal Screen Music in Santa Monica. It's like, ooh, you know, people, impressive. Of course, I didn't really do much. And then I remember I used to go to these Pro Tools. Like, this is 2001, too. Pro Tools used to have these, you know, whenever they would come out with a new version, they'd have like a demo at like Cutting Edge Audio in San Francisco or something like that. And I'd go to these, and I'd always see Matt, you know, and I was always one of those people like, oh man, I don't know, I'm gonna bug him again. Hey Matt, what's up? Remember we met like 6 months ago? I was like, oh yeah, how you doing? You know, he'd like talk to me for 5 minutes. And then I remember I went to a King's X show at the Edge in Palo Alto. And this is so interesting because I saw him at that show, and I remember kind of going like, oh man, like, I don't know, I should go talk to him again because he probably thinks I keep bugging him. But on my resume, I was living in Mountain View at the time at my parents' house. So I said hi to him, you know, I was like, hey, remember me? He's like, oh yeah. And then he just told me, he's like, oh, hey, I'm doing installation at this recording studio for this guy. It's in Mountain View. You should hook up with him. And I was like, oh, okay. Because, you know, Mountain View Res. And then next thing I know, I interviewed for this thing, and somehow I was the engineer, and then I became the studio operator. I just did the whole thing for like 3 years. And I was very, very lucky because it was being funded by a internet company. So nobody ever becomes a recording engineer and has a salary and a 401k. Because our money was coming from next door. He basically had this huge building, and he just took like a sliver of it and built out this huge, you know, state of the art, everything. And then, so we were making no money. You know, we're recording local people. I had a couple, you know, I did a session with like Dennis, what is his last name? Myron Dove?
Myron Dove.
Yeah, I used to play bass player. I used to play with Fred Santana. He came in with like Tony Lindsay a couple of times. I did a session with Dennis Chambers, the guy from Pink. He brought that band in a couple. And so I was like, oh my God, we're going to make it. We're going to make it. But I was also doing the books, and we were in the red all the time. And without the internet, without that internet company, there's no way we would have kept the lights on. But you know, I faked my way through so many sessions, you know, so many, and some of that stuff worked out. I mean, I was always like a cool guy, you know, I was a cool guy to work with. I kept the place in good shape. I always worked hard. I just learned as I went along, and I don't think I'm a, you know, I used to tell the guys, like, well, how come we don't have Metallica in here? And again, this guy just had the guy who owned the studio. I'm like, well, you should go hire Bob Rock, because I'm not like, your studio is going to bring in the clientele based upon, I'm just a local guy. I'm recording, TV jingles, and I'm not a composer per se. Like I can write, but I wasn't writing for stuff like that. And then of course the studio got shut down because it was losing money. And then a guy that I met, actually a really good friend of mine still, he was teaching Pro Tools at this school called Future Rhythm in Santa Clara. And he was like, hey, you want to teach some classes for us? And I was like, yeah, okay, I think I can do this. So I became a Pro Tools certified instructor for about a year and a half. And then at that point, I was also doing a lot more freelance audio engineering gigs. I did there was a project out of Half Moon Bay that this guy, he was a lawyer, so he was funding his daughter's. I worked on that for like a year, and it was amazing, because I was doing sessions for them every day for like a year almost, and he was a lawyer, and I billed him, and he was even like, he's like, hey, are you charging me for your emails? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, when you write emails, like business, like admin. I'm like, no. He's like, well, you should make sure you bill me for that. I'm like, okay. And I put like 1 hour admin fees. I'm like, Jesus, like, okay, works for me. So, and it's funny, like I used to put an ad in Craigslist, sometimes and I was teaching, actually, I taught drum lessons. So when I did move back in 2001 or 2, like I did go to my old band director at Mountain View High School, and I said, hey, if there's anybody who wants drum lessons, because I needed cash. I needed just like, I just wanted some. So I got one student, and then, it was Mondays and Tuesdays. I just kind of accumulated a bunch of students. And that was also like a side thing that, especially during the 2007-8 period where I was teaching Future Rhythm like 1 week a month. And then I was doing the freelance audio engineering gigs for people here and there. And then I was also like teaching on the side. So it all kind of added up. You just have a bunch of pots and pans burning. And then, so going back to the thing about, I used to put an ad on Craigslist saying, drummer available, like for my drum lessons. But they're like, I don't know, maybe, I'll get something. And I remember I got an email once, and I had a website at that time. Probably one of the, just Jimmy rigged it. It looked very 1990s almost. But, and I had all my stuff up there, very well organized. And I put so I put this ad out, and I get an email from this guy saying like, hey, do you want to play drums on a video game? And I just remember thinking to myself, yeah, it's probably some, Craigslist, you get the, the gamut, right? And I was thinking like, oh man, this guy's probably some guy in a basement, like what is this all about? But his email was at Activision.com. So I was like, wait a minute, like, I think this might be legit, So, and it was for Guitar Hero. So I met, and and it was an interesting thing because I always knew I wanted to get into the audio recording world. Man, it's to make a living as a freelance audio engineer, or just like that world just doesn't exist anymore. And I saw in 2007, I was like, I need to get out of here because this, and I was trying to get a job at Lucas, Skywalker. I was trying to like, how do you jump over? Like, how do you get from this world to this world? And then, because I worked at a post house, but I didn't have like reels of like, oh yeah, here's a commercial I did and all that stuff. So again, it's like I got into the video game world and this is actually, it's interesting because like the guy, it was first of all, it was for a video game that, Guitar Hero, right? It's music based. It was Guitar Hero Van Halen. So they were introducing drums. So I did all the MIDI programming for that. I also mixed a bunch of songs. But the guy, me and Nick, my boss at the time, we connected. I went to his house. Actually, that's another thing. It's like, I'm really glad, the music part, because we interviewed, but then I went to his house and we jammed. And it's that, because he was an organ player, he was a keyboard player, and we ended up putting together like a trio during the time we worked together. And yeah, so that was like 2 years of, you know, there's the kind of the tail end of the heyday of Guitar Hero, and it was great. I mean, yeah, we did an awesome game, and you know, we get to work with all these classic songs. But then they, just like most video games, you know, sometimes there's like a fad. They have a certain video game that's really popular for a few years, and then it just kind of becomes unpopular, and they cut the cord, shut everything down. So our studio in Redwood Shores got shut down, and yeah, that was one. This is 2010. I mean, I had now on my resume, oh, okay, my resume was starting to fill up a little bit. There was some street cred, but I had done a rhythm game, a video game, not like a traditional like Call of Duty or something. And first of all, I'm not a gamer. Like even when I went to Guitar Hero, I've never owned an actually I did own an Xbox. I don't play games. It's not my thing. But I remember, like, actually one of my students had guitar. When I was interviewing for Guitar Hero, I was like, oh man, I've never played this before in my life. So I borrowed one of my students' Xbox and just played it for 2 weeks, just to not look like a complete idiot during the interview. But yeah, afterwards, I was trying to get into my next gig, and it was hard for a year. Nothing. Actually, I got hired to write a recording book. I did that, but it never got published. Yeah, man, it was tough. It was really tough because I was in a space where I had done some work, but I hadn't done enough to, you know, if they were making another Guitar Hero, I would have been hired right away, but I didn't. So it was really difficult to kind of convince people to hire me. And I wasn't like junior level, but I wasn't senior. So, and of course they take into consideration salary, right? You know, well, we know you're going to ask for this much. If you were just like your entry level guy, we could take you. So it's almost like I was overqualified at times, but then I was underqualified. It was definitely tough. I questioned whether I could stay in the industry, whether I needed to go. I thought, is this a sign? Am I supposed to go now learn coding? Am I supposed to go become a software engineer? But I stuck with it, man. I just kept. A friend of mine that I worked with at Guitar Hero, he worked with this one place called Tapulous. And, you know, it's the same thing, man. Persistence, man. Just like every other month, I'm like, hey, man, what's up? Like, just checking in. Just thought I'd check in. Like, everybody on my audio team got hired after Guitar Hero. Like, they all, like, and I was the last guy. And I just kept, you know, you sit there with self-doubt. You're like, what's wrong with me? Like, you know, I'm a good worker. Like, I don't get it. Why aren't people, like, hiring me? So, yeah, that went on for a while. And then I remember Wally was working at this. Actually, Tapulous got bought by Disney. Tapulous was a mobile video game company in Palo Alto. They made Tap Tap Revenge, which is basic. You know, it was a rhythm game. It was like Guitar Hero on your phone, just for like 2-track. So you're playing like with your thumbs. And because I am very like, you know, I'm not really good at a lot of things, but I work hard. Like I'm very persistent. I just kind of fake it till I make it. I'm on top. I always turn in my stuff on time. I'm fairly easy to work with. And so I just kept hounding Wally. I'm like, hey man, like just let me know if anything ever opens up, you know? And he was just being driven they were working him to death. And he's like, listen, man, either I'm going to ask for them to hire someone else to help me or I'm going to leave. And you can take a beating. And I know that, and I was like, yeah, I'm in, like, I'll do it. So I remember he was leaving, and again, persistence, just making that phone call. It goes back to even going back to that guy at King's X, you know, you just stay with it. Don't try to be annoying. Just keep your contacts. And then he ended up leaving, and I remember he's like, "Hey man, I'm leaving, but I want your personality. You can take the abuse." I was like, "All right, I need a job, man." I remember like I went for the interview. I'm like, if I don't get this interview, I need to think of something else because I'm going in debt. I was like $20,000 in debt. I had some medical stuff going on, everything, man. It was just like, you talk about bottom falling out. And then I went for the interview and I thought I killed it. I was like, yeah, man, like, you know, they liked me. And I just sat by the phone, like, come on, man, call me back. And then I remember, you know, following up and saying like, hey, just checking in, like, and then at one point they were like, because I was going to be the one audio guy. And then at one point she called me. She's like, oh, we need to talk to our audio director now. I'm like, wait, there's an audio director now? 2 weeks ago, you guys didn't have anybody. They're like, yeah, there's an audio director now. I'm like, oh, no. So at that point, I was like, oh, no, this is horrible because this guy's going to bring in his people. Like, I'm out. Like, so luckily the interview went well. Our personalities matched. And that thing has grown from us working on this basic online, or I'm sorry, mobile game, you know, little tap revenge, you just thumping away, growing from it was just me and him, growing from that to like, now I think there's 8 of us. And, you know, we just, I mean, Nick Gallant, the guy I work for now, I mean, he is incredible. I mean, he's incredible as far as our team growing to, you know, then we ended up doing all the games for all the studios. You know, we had like Austin, Prague, Seattle, and we just kept expanding. And then, you know, working for Disney is, I mean, it's great. I am a salaried employee. It's not a project to project, and I'll stay there till the end. It's a very good setup for me. But, you know, there's no guarantees in it. I mean, it's constantly shifting. The industry shifts. I think when you work for anything that's creative, we're not making food, you know, we're making something that people don't really need because taste, you know, oh, they like Frozen now, and now they like Star Wars. So it's constantly pivoting, you know, where now we stopped doing games and now we're doing a lot of content for Amazon. So I've been doing a lot of long form stories. You know, it's almost like old school radio. You know, somebody's telling this Marvel story and I'm putting all the sounds, and then Iron Man comes. You know, I'm putting all the Iron Man stuff and things like that. And you just same thing, man. And you know, when I started sound design, I mean, I'm still figuring it out, you know, all of this stuff. I didn't go to sound design school. I never went to this stuff. I think thing that's kept me is like, even when we have projects, it's like, I'll deliver on time. I mean, I've said to people like, don't worry, I got this, you know, and it's like, okay, cool. This guy did it. He got it done. And I'm fairly easy to work with. So, because some people are they're difficult personalities, man. They could be really amazing, but it's like, man, this guy he just makes everything so difficult. Like, you just want a revision. Like, why does it have to be like you're like pulling teeth, you know? I think any industry, you have the people that are just difficult. So I don't know if that answers, it's kind of like I said, I ramble at times.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty amazing story that you went through this journey. And I think it's fascinating. And the thing that I get from you is the persistence, which is what I have built my life on, is not giving up and sticking with stuff, you know, not knowing what'll come tomorrow, but somehow sticking with stuff, and you know, the universe will open up and something will come in. Yeah. And it's an amazing success story to me, you know. So I think one of the things that I try to do for students is let them know about things. And, you know, it's a different world out there right now with music. And, you know, I've been teaching for 35 years. And when I was teaching, you know, 20-something-year-olds and teenagers, now teaching kids, you know, they're not really interested in music that much. So it's a different ballgame for me. So I have to like adapt, you know, like you, I adapt. What can I do to make it interesting? What, you know, I have to simplify. I have to change my program. I have to do all these things. So it caters to them. So one of the things that I think that is really good about what you did is you learned things, and then you got into the things, and then you stuck it out, like getting on, like experience with playing, and you're playing with a bunch of different people, and you did all these things. Then you know that you love it, you know. So you know it kept coming in your life in resurgence of different kinds of situations. And the recording, same thing. It's like you knew you loved it, and you started kind of teaching yourself, and that kind of got you into the thing of like getting these different kinds of jobs, and then, you know, following up all the time, and then being professional, getting your projects done. So I want students to understand, like, there's different things that you can do in the music business that when I grew up, it was about getting a record deal and about touring and about, you know, writing music. And that was our dream. It's we're going to tour the world. We're going to be respected. And things change, you know, and we don't have a record deal. We don't have record labels, and we don't have these things that what I knew when I was younger now is, you know, not there and different. So it's encouraging for students to hear there's these different aspects of life and that are involved in music. And I remember you telling me, it's like, oh, I'm playing drums on these projects. So I'm using what I did, what I do, and what I learned, excuse me, to play on you know, projects I'm doing. So I'm still using my skills, which I thought was amazing, you know. And that's another part of like, hey, you know, it wasn't like I just quit playing or I did this for a while. That I'm actually I'm using what I learned, and I'm applying it to different things and different kind of work situations. So that's kind of another thing with this series that I'm doing, and interviewing people that have, you know, different life stories. So your life story is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it keeps going. You know, I think that. Even though I say that, yes, Disney is something that I want to do till whatever retirement age, but I know things can change, you know, and I think it's, for example, I was furloughed during this period from like April till just a couple of weeks ago. Disney was losing about $1 billion a month. I mean, if you've heard the news, I mean, the parks, like, Disney is this, it's almost like a little country, and it's got all these different arms, you know. No one's making movies right now. They can't put out movies. They've had to shift. So they needed to cut the bleeding. And so I was furloughed, even though I'm not connected to, our division is totally different, but that's fine. They had like 48 hours, like, we got to stop revenue somehow. So I went from like, wow, okay, I may have to go somewhere else. And luckily I didn't. But, you know, during that process, I updated my website. I updated my demo reel. I got myself ready. I'm like, you know, if the time comes, I don't want to leave the people that I work with. But that's the reality. There's people saying, oh my God, Disney, like, it's like, no, like, things can go away. And I love this, I don't know if there's a band called Animals as Leaders. And the guitar player, Tobias, I don't know what his last name is, but there's this great video series, Rick Beato, do you know him? YouTube guy? And he was interviewing him, and I think this was probably like a month ago. And, they're talking about touring and musicians and all that. And he used this word called pivot, Tobias did. And I just thought, like, he just had this attitude of, like, he wasn't like, oh, no, we're never going to tour again. Like, boo-hoo. He was like, he kind of was smiling. He's like, well, we might have to pivot. We might have to pivot to a new way of doing things. Maybe now it's going to be more this than that. And I mean, there's only one constant in life, and that's pretty much change. Things are going to change. And I think about musicians that are like the old school studio guys, let's say, in the 80s, we're doing like 3 sessions back to back, and I remember somebody saying like, oh, back in the day, you had your A-level players and then you had like your D-level players. The D-level could still make a living by playing on demos. Well, no one plays on demos anymore. And now it just seems like the major top studio guys, there's like 10 guys and then that's it, But it's just, it's like, I think everybody, just like what you're doing, it's always about pivoting, reassessing things. It's like, the dream of, oh, we're going to get a record deal and go on the road and we're going to be on the covers. And you know what, there's that 1% maybe that gets that. But I think that how long can you sustain that too? I mean, that you've got your U2s and, these bands that have been able to make a 40-year career. And I mean, that's awesome. That's really awesome to get into that situation. But the reality is like, it's just making a music living in and they call it the music business, I know a lot of people who are really good at the music part. When it comes to the business part, they're just like, and I mean, it's horrible because in these times, I have friends that all they do is tour. This is their livelihood. And it's horrible because now it's like, that's just, I don't know, is that 2021? Is that when things are going to open up again? And I think, people have to, and it's horrible because if you just have this revenue stream and it's just cut, that's it. And so there's things like, saving, being good with investments, saving for a rainy day. There was an email or a Facebook thread about, for example, I get salary, so I take 10% and it's savings. And they were talking about, this guy put this thread, like, when you do a gig, a $200 gig, do you take $20 and just automatically set it aside? And so I think it's been an interesting process for people to think about finances and that. And it's difficult, man. I think struggling with art versus commerce, I think that's always a tough one. Like you were saying about, we're going to be respected, we're going to play the music that we like, and no one's going to tell us how to do it. And it's just, I mean, I just think that people need to think about like, well, I got to make a living, and I love, there was a story about Rick Beato talking about, back in the day you had Steely Dan and all these sus chords and ninths and all these rich elements brought into pop music. And now it's just 1, 4, 5, 6, it's just cookie cutter. And he's like, no one's putting in these interesting chords in the 70s now. It's so formulaic. But he said, if you're a Nashville producer or a songwriter, you probably know how to write intricate stuff. But if somebody comes to you and says, well, I got a pop country song I need you to write, it's probably going to be a #1 hit. It's for Carrie Underwood. Is the guy going to be like, well, hold on, let me put in some like Steely Dan little stuff? He's like, no, I'm going to give you what you need because I have a mortgage. I got kids. This song will probably generate $250,000 for me. So I'm going to do what needs to be done. And I mean, I'm sure it's that balance of like, well, I have to do this in order to survive as a musician. And I think that pivoting is the big thing. And so when I had people at Future Rhythm, people always say like, man, I want to get into the music industry. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, well, I love music. I'm like, well, I've yet to meet a person in life who's like, God, putting notes together in a rhythmic fashion is the worst experience in the world. I mean, everybody likes it. And I think it's that perception of like, oh, well, I'm in a touring band and everybody likes me and, rock and roll. And they want that, but you kind of realize that when you there's stuff that I work on that I don't, I'm not saying I don't like it, but I'm sure you know this. It's like you've played gigs. You're like, I don't know, man. It's just like, but you're doing it, right? Because it's a gig, or you're doing some things that not every day. I don't think either of us wake up and it's like, there's plenty of things that sometimes you just do because you're like, well, it's what being a professional is about, right? You bring your best to the table, even when you don't feel like doing it. So, because I think that dream that I had, I was in the same, I was in high school and I just thought like, oh yeah, man, I'm just gonna join a band and, all this stuff's gonna kind of work out, and we're gonna get a deal, we're gonna tour, I'm gonna make a lot of money. Yeah, no, for some people it does. So I think anybody, when I did have students and, same thing, like they're in high school and they're trying to make a decision, make a decision of like, well, how do I do this? Like, how do I generate income? And I think one last thing here is that then I'm just kind of going off on this stuff. I think it's like I thought about, because I talked to some friends of mine, in the industry. We always, I'm sure just like you talk to friends, you're always like talking about the industry and like what they're up to. And I also think that there's like a level of kind of deciding what level somebody is comfortable with in terms of their life. I'm not good at being freelance. I think I came to that realization years ago. I don't do I think I function better in a controlled environment as far as like, Disney. Some people wouldn't want to work for Disney because they don't like that. They don't want to be constricted. They're like, oh, I want to be able to pick and choose what I like. That stuff. And I think I have some friends that work for, they write for the big games like Halo, these like really top AAA level video games. And I think those guys can sustain a good freelance career. That also pays them a healthy amount. I know that I don't want to be living like on a really, like I need to make a certain amount of money per year to feel comfortable as a human being. And I think when you're 25, maybe only making, $2,000 a month is fine. And one time I was in Nashville, we were there for like a weekend, and I met this drummer, and he was probably like early 20s or something. He's like, yeah, man, if I make $1,500 a month, I'm set. I'm like, that's it? He's like, yeah, man, my rent is $400. Like, he just lifted off, all of his lists. I was like, wow, man, that's incredible. Like $1,500. That was less than what I paid rent, and it was kind of fascinating to hear. But he was 25, I think when you're 25 versus what money means to you when you're 35 versus 25 and 45 and 25 is different, So yeah, I think somebody deciding like what kind of lifestyle they like, if they want to be more of the gypsy, gig to gig, no health insurance, no savings, just kind of flying, who knows what tomorrow brings them. And that's cool. I respect those people. I can't, like, I develop way too much anxiety if I was in that situation, because I'd probably freak out. But I kind of wish sometimes I could live that way, that I had that mentality, because I have some friends that are very like renegade, kind of like, just, it's gig to gig, man. Just who knows, And I'm like, man, like I can't do it. So.
Wow. Great. Very, very amazing. Couple more questions and then
Sure.
We'll wrap up. So kind of bringing it back to just when you did study with me, and I don't know if you remember what we worked on. Would you say you got you got value from my teaching curriculum?
Oh, without a doubt. No, you were, I wish I had started with you at the beginning. I think what you taught me was so, I have a lot of bad habits that I still I'm still working through so many bad habits. But you were, I didn't know rudiments. I remember we had our like the samba pattern underneath. And then I think we did the Ted Reed book, right? You had the jazz ride pattern, and then you do the whole, like, was it pages like 37 to 43 or something, right? All that stuff was like, I wouldn't have, you opened up that world. Like I came from the funky primer, and I was just like, I don't know, just eighth notes. And no, I think you shifted me towards understanding so many things, the French grip and the German grip and just all of these things that I'm still trying to work through, opening up myself to play in a more even or relaxed fashion and so forth. And I know when I taught, man, I used your stuff all the time. I did. So props to you for taking me as what was I, 16 or something? 16 years old and just being a bit of a drumming idiot and just kind of being like, oh, okay, there's some stuff I gotta kind of figure out. So yeah, my one thing would have been like, if I had just started with you like at the beginning and learned some good habits, because I had to break a lot of stuff, and I had to. And I remember, I think you were in Burlingame, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It was off of. I remember. So yeah, there was this. You had your Yamaha kit on one side. I think you had like a GMS, right, on the other.
Well, I had various kits. There might have been the Slingerland. Might have been the GMS. But yeah, I had various kits.
Yeah.
It was my parents' house, and I taught there for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
And I actually had students from all over the world come through there because they come through San Francisco.
Yeah.
I was close to San Francisco. So I and you talked about BAM Magazine and these different things, and there was people that would contact me, and I put that ad in there every week. And, that's kind of what happened. So it was kind of a weird thing because I just converted a bedroom, but it worked. And you'd have to come through the whole house to get, it was like in the back.
I remember that. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah, I remember it was, I could visually close my eyes, and I remember your driveway. I remember like going through your house, and then, it was like down the hallway on the left. And you had your mic set up. I think you're probably recording the ADAT.
I had a
DAT machine.
It was called a cassette. It was called the MIDI Studio 88, which was an 8-track Tascam MIDI Studio, which I have it in the closet. It sounds great.
Yeah, no.
Cassette 8-track.
I think you had it where you would record me sometimes, I think, because I think everything was mic'd up.
Yeah.
So, but no, it was awesome. It really was. I appreciate all of the great work you did for the 2 or 3 years that we were working together. And like, just, there was so much a whole new world that was opened up to me that I didn't know about. And I think it took somebody like you to kind of like, oh, by the way, here's this stuff, you know? And yeah, so thank you. Thanks for all of that great information and knowledge back when I was in high school.
You're welcome.
Yeah, for sure.
So last question. What are some pointers or advice that you can give to younger musicians that are trying to get into the music business and starting out? What kind of things can you advise?
Well, I feel that I've probably hit a lot of things in some of the things I mentioned about learning to pivot, learning to be a person that understands that you may be riding a great wave for a while, having some success, but all waves eventually kind of phase out. And just having a good attitude, I think being somebody that people enjoy being around. I mean, I've never done a major tour, but I know a lot of people talk about, you know, like you got to be a great player, but man, if you're spending 8 hours on a bus with somebody who just has like a really bad attitude, it's like having a bad girl, you know, like a girlfriend. You're just like, oh man, like she's just so good looking, but oh, I can't, like her personality, just like, oh. So I think just having that attitude, that consistency, you know, somebody that's like dependable. Communication is really important, you know, like answering, like all these little things, like reply to emails on a timely fashion and don't be weird, and just be like, cool, like this, like right now, I mean, this track I'm working for, you know, I keep in contact with the guy, and I did a first pass. I was working 14-hour days, like the week, I was finishing some Disney stuff, and I was going away on a weekend. And I said to him, like, hey man, I just want to give you like a quick rough draft of what I think I'm going to do. And I just did it, you know, I sat down, I played it, I sent it to him. I'm sure you know this. It's like, I learned lesson years ago, like you mix an album, but just make sure the first one they like before you commit to 10 songs. So I was like, hey, do you like this? This is the general idea. This is the first draft. And then I sent it, and he's like, oh yeah, can you do this and this? And it's like, cool, sweet. You know, so I'm going to finish that for him today. And it's just that communication that you're just like, hey, this is a cool person to work with. And there's no guarantees. That's the other thing, man. There's no guarantees that, going back to that thing, you know, if you're young and something does, I think sometimes having failures is so good. It's so good to have failures and to understand that, like, yeah, you know what, things may change, and like, what's your attitude when that happens, and like learning how to take a breath and just kind of like when I was talking about the 2010 period of just like, I hope that never happens again, but if it does, I'm like, cool. You know what? I'm okay. I'm okay with chaos. I'm okay with adversity. But it's hard right now so a friend of mine teaches at USC, and I went to this performance thing. They have a jazz school, but they also have like a pop production school. And they had like their year, whatever, like Christmas concert or something, and I went to see it. Amazing people, like everybody up there is amazing. You know, they're really good players. And I know that, I mean, I'll just be a little bit critical of what I saw. And when I say what I saw is that they were playing like a lot of cover music, like Bruno Mars and stuff like that. And I remember kind of thinking to myself, so you're going to go to school, and you're going to, I mean, these schools they cost like I know friends that are still paying off tuition. Like, man, like how much did that cost? And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, so did you go to school to learn how to play Bruno Mars songs? And I guess there's a part of me that goes, I guess I would rather, I mean, playing in cover bands, I mean, that's kind of doesn't really, making a living playing, 6 nights a week. It's like, I don't really know a lot of people that, it's just weekends now, if that. So I guess I just thought to myself, like, I would rather go move move somewhere where live music is a viable thing. You can, or go on a cruise ship if you have to, because I can't imagine being 25 and having $150,000 worth of college debt to pay with to get out under. And then how much are you making as a gigging musician? Unless you hit like a, AAA level touring gig, that even those, I have friends that, so I kind of know that industry a little bit, and I know those aren't paying like huge amounts of money unless you're like in the band. So I think for younger people to investigate, okay, like I think it's always like defining in your head, like what do you want to do? Like, get more real. Like, okay, I want to work in video games. I want to be a composer. I want to be, a touring musician or so forth like that. Because I think once you start to, and then also like, okay, maybe I'm a rock guy. There's nothing wrong with being a rock guy. I know that now it's like, yeah, you should be able to play all the styles, and that's important, but maybe defining it a little bit more concrete. And then also just thinking about the revenue stream and how do you process that, where I read, I don't know who said this, like this is in some Modern Drummer magazine, there's like a jazz drummer, and he was just saying that, when you're driving home at night and you just made $50 and that's going to get you through the next week, man, like, dude, that stuff, you start to really think about, how am I going to make this work for myself and the other people around me? So, and I think because he was talking about like taking like a pop gig or something like that, and just knowledge. I think that's the other thing. I think don't ever stop learning. Don't ever stop taking online. I mean, now, man, you can learn anything online now, man. Like there's online classes for, you name it, man. So it's a constant and constantly revising because new technology is going to come up, new software is going to come up, new ways of doing things are going to come up, and I kind of joke with people where it's like the guy who used to be a VCR repairman, and he's like, man, it's like, yeah, it's time to move on, man. Like, nobody uses VCRs anymore, and you could either sit on the sideline and be all like, boo-hoo, like, how come I don't work anymore? Or you're like, well, what's the new technology? What's the new, I mean, it's 2020. I mean, who knows? You think about where we were when I was in high school. I mean, you were saying you were recording on a Tascam, and this is how many years later we're now doing a Zoom call. You're creating an online thing. I'm going to go record, some like drums into a computer and send it off to somebody in the middle of America. I mean, I don't know. And then now with this whole COVID thing, I mean, I really miss going to shows. I live like not too far from the Baked Potato. Oh, man, I'll tell you, man, going to see shows there. You know the Baked Potato?
Yes.
Yes. And like, in this town, man, I mean, I'm sitting and, Simon Phillips is like you know, like the back of that kitchen, like that's how close you are. And going to see that at night and just being able to witness that is like, oh my God. And I know there's live streams now, and I know people are doing it, and I just, it's not the same, you know, I just can't. So I think to sum it up for younger people is just be hungry, be persistent, be a cool dude or girl, or, you know, just realize that there's going to be pitfalls and challenges, because there's going to be highs and lows. And I think that's just like kind of like in life, you know, things change in life, and, you know, people move and relationships change, and people aren't there anymore and so forth. And you just, it's going to happen. You can't avoid it. You can't avoid it. And I may work at Disney for a long time, and maybe not. And then when that process of having to adapt to something changes, then it's like, okay, cool. You know, it's going to have to happen. But I think a lot of people, I'm sure your students are probably, you know, just like I was a senior in high school, and you get to that point of like, oh, okay, college, right? It's a big decision, especially now with finances. Do I go to a place like Berkeley? Do I go to, you know, USC or something like that? Thinking about tuition. What's the goal when you do get out? Researching like where you can make a revenue stream. Thinking about, okay, I mean, it could be from touring, but what's the ultimate goal? Maybe somebody does want to get into teaching right away. Think about that. Or if they want to get into side work. I think accumulating as many different skill sets as possible is so important, you know. And I think most people know how to use a computer and record tracks and do all sorts of that, and mic up a drum set, you know, like setting up a drum set and getting able to get tones, and having a website or whichever medium you can for generating some income. Because I've always adapted, you know, I respect the working musician, you know, that guy who's just, I'm just a working drummer, you know. It's simple. I'm not on the cover of whatever magazine. I'm just a dude who just, and somebody who can do it for, you know, like you, who can do it for so many years and still doing it, man. That's some street cred right there, you know. And I think your students can look to you and be like, hey, like, this is what I've had to do, you know, pivot, change, you know, do this, and be smart with finances. And if you do get the record deal or whatever, or big endorsement, you know, take a little bit of money, put it to the side, you know. I mean, right, you know, I know stock markets go like this, but I don't know, just like, you know, buying property and investing in property. And there's a great podcast that I listen to called I Hit That. I haven't listened to it in a while, but the guy was interviewing a lot of, you know, top session guys, the top touring guys, and guys would talk about different revenue streams, you know, buying property somewhere, especially in California and different places. And they're like, yeah, man, when I wasn't touring, you know, I had a rental property that kind of kept me going. Things like that I think are very smart to help in those lean times when things aren't, you know, when the money isn't trickling down. It's a little small. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, Peter, that's awesome. You know, I really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it's been really great hearing about your life and catching up. So, you know, stay safe and continue doing what you're doing. Keep me updated, and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was wonderful to hear from you, man. I think when I saw that email, I was like, oh yeah, that's fun. That sounds like fun.
Yeah, and, I'm in the process. You know, I have this list.
Oh gosh.
I went through my old. I had an old. We used to have this thing called Day Runner in the day, which was like before you could like have a note of like a contact list, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I had this thing that I'd write all my students down in this organizer, and I went through and I'm looking at people. You know, I'm going, oh, what happened to this?
Yeah.
Stuff is popping in my head too.
Yeah.
Yeah, what about this guy? Because I must have taught over 5,000 people.
Wow. 5,000?
It keeps coming up, and I can't get a hold of people too. What happened? You know, what happened to him? And I have one student that you know, like I taught him and his friend, and you know, his stepdad had some depression and took his life, and he's not talking, like he won't. He's going through something, so I can't get him to.
Yeah.
You know, he kind of texts, you know, and but you know, here's a kid that transformed himself. I mean, he was like, not like a really great student to like this amazing player, you know, playing shows and transforming and pivoting, and I got to get him. I got to get him on you know, on the interview, and he won't do it. You know, other people. I'm reaching out to teachers. I had a big mentor in Boston.
Yeah.
Not teaching in Berkeley, but outside.
Yeah.
He had played with Al Di Meola for many years, and he was on one of the I think it was called it wasn't Casino, but the one after that, Hotel Splendigo.
Yeah.
And I can't get a hold of him. I don't know where he is.
Yeah.
I'm asking my other teachers that would know he's in New York, and can't find him.
Wow.
So I'm reaching, you know, I'm just putting it out there, and some people are responding right away. Other people don't respond at all. Yeah,
no, it's just the way it is. You know, people respond.
Right. But it's a journey, and it's really amazing. I think as doing this for so long, my joy is to like hear how students are doing.
Yeah.
I enjoy when students reach out to me after a long time.
Yeah.
That I don't know. It's just something about the personal relationships.
Yeah.
You bond with people, and you know, they have families, and they, you know, they're doing this and that and this and that, and maybe they're not doing music anymore. Maybe they're doing something else, but that's good. I still enjoy that they had that journey, you know, and I just enjoy hearing, you know, what they're doing, you know, on a personal level.
Well, man, I mean, actually, one thing I was going to ask you a question here, but before this thought leaves my head, you know, the whole point you're saying, like, if somebody, what advice for students, you know, going forward? I think you mentioned like there's some people who aren't doing music anymore, or some that are. And if I could, the one thing I always hear from a lot of people is people that, you know, aren't in the music industries. They always say like, man, I wish I had stayed with it. And I think, you know, not everybody that you're going to teach is going to go off and be a successful touring drummer, and even people maybe like, well, like me, who might work in the music audio industry, you know, kind of be a hybrid almost. And then other people who just become lawyers and doctors and, you know, real estate people. I think playing drums is so good for you. Like, and if I just said, I mean, I would love to hear back from the students that I had a couple of people that are, gosh, just curious, like, what are they doing now? But I think it just drumming and doing music and like just makes you like a better person, you know? It just makes you like a rounded individual. And I think it's good for you. It's good for your brain. It's good to like have that outlet. I know drums is hard because like we make so much noise, and like finding a place to, I mean, that's the biggest thing, right? People, I just can't play anymore. I'm in an apartment, you know, or just, I just can't, I don't have the space. But I would just tell people, like, you know what, even though if you're going to be working another job or whatever, just stay with it, you know, because it's going to help you so much in your later years in terms of like development as a human being. And the things you learn by, you know, taking lessons, I think the skills that you learn, it's not so much like, I learned a 5-stroke roll or a paradiddle. I think you learn preparation, you know, making sure you show up your lesson and you don't look like a totally unprepared person, and the value of doing work, the value of putting time into something. I think we live in a world now where, it's so instant, right? You want, like, oh, there's an app. Guess what? In 5 days, you can learn how to become a rock drummer. Like, it's like, no, man. Like, I think drums are easy because we get an instant sound. Like, I can do, your rock beat, but to put in the time. So I would just advise people, even in those times where you think you just want to put it in the closet, don't play it. The wife doesn't let me play, or I just got too busy. Everybody that I met who had played or done music of some sort, when I talk to them and they don't do it, you kind of see this little thing in their eye where there's like, oh man, I wish I had stayed with it. So I would say, like, don't stop playing, even if you're not playing professionally. But to circle, how many people do you have on your list? I mean, you said 5,000 students, but how long is this process going to take you?
Well, it pops into my head daily, and I have a list on my phone. So when it pops in my head, I write it down immediately.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, I go through different channels because it could be different eras and different decades.
Yeah. Wow.
I have people I taught in the very beginning. I have people where I was really teaching a lot, and then I have people that are somewhat of maybe towards the 2000s, and then I have current people.
Yeah.
So I can't remember everybody, and I didn't make a master list.
Yeah.
Of everything that I did, because I used to, when people quit, I used to erase them and put in the next person.
Yeah.
So it's like these different eras and different decades.
Yeah.
But I am trying to go through and reach as many people as I can, and then I'm actually going to compile different things. And I'm not going to use every single bit, but I'll put pointers in and whatnot, along with like a lesson that I'm teaching,
Yeah.
It'll be boom, this, here's a pointer of somebody that did this, and, here's this lesson on this. And I'm trying to make it to where, they have some, real world application, rather than me giving a drum lesson, which I've done, where I just, here's my drum lesson. And there's, there's a million people giving drum lessons, so how can I add value and be a little bit creative and different, that I can add some things that people go, oh yeah, I got something out of that. Because I know for me, I'm watching videos all the time. I enjoy YouTube. I enjoy watching people's points, and like the guys that you mentioned, I'm all over all that stuff all the time.
Yeah.
I learn audio things. I learn video things. I learn drum lesson things. I watch, all these different guys, Drumeo and all these things, and I learn from all of it, and I enjoy all of it, and I enjoy the production quality of it too. Like, what are they using for camera? Like, that looks so great. Like, oh, the drum sounds, like Instagram. Like, what are they doing in the drum sounds? Those drum sounds are amazing. Like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
Like the chops, it's like, oh, that's cool. What is that? So all these different kinds of things with production and audio and video. And to me, it's all fascinating. And besides all that stuff, even when I'm in the house here, I can go and learn about like fixing things, which has been another little passion of mine.
Yeah.
Like, I could pretty much like learn anything on YouTube and fix anything in the house.
Oh yeah.
Besides doing, like, I haven't done like hardcore construction, but I have fixed my septic system.
Yeah.
I have wired things. I have done, major projects in my house just from watching YouTube. And to me, it's fascinating, and I enjoy doing it. And it sounds weird. I think I got that from my dad.
Yeah.
My dad taught me to like fix things, know. But the joy I get from that, from like accomplishing, like fixing something, and thinking about it, is immeasurable. It's a weird little side thing, but owning a
And
house,
yeah,
learning about that stuff is been like, I can learn so much just watching videos, and you get addicted to like just watching all these. There's so much information.
yeah. Oh, without a doubt.
Amazing tool if you think about like how this stuff has come about, and this endless like amounts of knowledge just on YouTube besides the internet. I mean, we didn't have internet when we were younger, you know, we kind of had to learn it from people, but now it's like all out there. So it's like endless, you know, endless, anything. It's
Yeah.
just whatever your heart desires, it's there, you know, and you can learn it. And I even mentioned about the online stuff. It's like, it's all, like we said, pivoting. It's pivoting towards that. Like you can just sit in your, wherever you are and learn stuff online.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. No, it's true.
You'd have to go somewhere and, you know, like go to these major places to study with this person. I mean, you could just take a Skype lesson online now, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, that comes kind of full circle. And you said you had one question for me.
Well, I think it was but yeah, like how many people do you have, you know, how many people have you interviewed, or how many people do you still have left on your list? And I guess you answered it like it's constantly evolving. I mean, yeah.
Whoever I can get a hold of right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I imagine people are at home, so maybe it might be a little bit easier.
That was the benefit of it. But you know, you had a good point about people not responding or not, you know, they don't return emails or they're maybe they got a little bit of a thing with they don't want anybody to know where they are, and they just want to be, you know, kind of off the grid, so to speak. And there is that too, you know?
Yeah, no, I think that, yeah, I mean, these days with emails, texting, you know, that's just part of life, you know? It's like, even just friends, you're like, oh, he hasn't returned my text. And then you kind of wonder, like, well, something happened to him? And I get it. Like, I'm one of those people, I'm pretty, you know, I do respond. Like, I don't, you know, I don't just go MIA.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I couldn't do this Zoom video, or if I didn't want to, I would have just been like, hey, I appreciate it, but I'll decline.
That's with me, that means a lot, because they're honest with me, and they just let me know I'm cool with that. You know, it's like, cool, move on to the next guy. The other thing of the I mean, just like gigs, you know, when you're doing, I actually booked a big tour before COVID, you know, so I reach out to 1 million clubs and persistency, and, you know, people don't respond at all, and that's part of it. And sometimes when they do respond, they say like, no, you're not right for this. And I love that. It's like, thanks for, like, you know, you just saved me like 10 emails of trying to get a hold of you and get an answer. Like, that's great. I can move on to the next thing. And then I was kind of successful with like trying to nail down some things, and it was all set up. And, you know, of course it all dissolved in March. But yeah, that kind of communication thing and being honest, I think, is another asset that people don't know how far that goes. You know, of just saying like, no, I'm not into it, I think I'll pass, and just letting the person know, rather than the MIA thing where, you know, it's like, oh, okay, because it's a weird message of like, you know, is this person responsible? Can I count on them? You know, are they going to show up? Are they not going to show up? And that's another thing in the music business that, you know, somebody could be really talented, but they have this very weird, they're dysfunctional. And I've seen it a lot. And just like you were kind of saying before, it's like, well, can I count on this person? Or, you know, is something going to happen? Are they going to put me in jeopardy on something important, you know, and they're going to leave me hanging? It's like, well, I don't know if I'm going to risk that. Yeah. So I think that's another thing that I try to tell students too, is that being responsible and just being, you know, honest and sincere with your your answers and say, well, this is what it is, or I can't respond, or this is what I can do, this is what I can't do. And I think people appreciate that. And then you have the bonds of trust, which is allowing you to be a person that somebody can count on, and therefore you get the work.
Yeah. I think those are very, very important points for anybody coming up to know that there are very rare cases that you can just be so insanely talented and good, and you can still be, kind of a bit of a difficult person to deal with. And there are far and few that they're, it's like, oh man, but he's so good. We'll put up with whatever, But going back to that podcast, the Aaron Sterling, he's like a studio session drummer. He was being interviewed, and he said, he's a guy who plays with John Mayer. He's on everybody's records, And he was saying that, the days, because there's so much less work, and it's just so competitive out there, the days of you being able to be kind of, difficult, those days are kind of gone. Because, it's like, all right, you're talented, but you're so difficult. Like, I just, there's 20 other dudes that I can go call. And you kind of, I think I don't know, was it the 80s or I've met people that are like, wow, man, I can't believe you got this far in life. With this thing, this vibe that you got going on. And you know what? I still meet people like that. And you just scratch your head. You're like, I don't know, man. You know what? I somehow talk about pivot, right? You're just able to somehow weave your way through this. But yeah, I think that does, I think of the people that I work with on a daily basis. And like you said, being dependable, if you're going to book a gig and it's I know this guy's going to show up and know the songs. It's as simple as that, man. It's such a basic thing. It's I know you can shred, but can you just play? I mean, I'm a drummer, so if I don't know the chords, whatever, if I hit the snare, or, this, but if you're okay, the downbeat is going to be an A chord, and the bass player knows it's an A chord, but the guitar player is but check out, I'm going to shred on this solo. It's I need you, just know the song, man. That's all I need. It's so yeah, little things like that actually I would take the guy who's a simpler player, but I know he's going to show up, and I know he's going to know the songs. He's going to have oh man, we don't get drink coupons, or wait, are they going to feed us? It's no, man, just play the gig. Why does it, So yeah, but I mean, if you're a monster player and a cool dude, oh my, dude, then you're just, then you just, but just stay, I think most guys at that level, they're good people, I don't think they're good and they're humble, and I think they couple that with their ability just to be monster players, and you're just cool, he's going to play amazingly, and I'm going to have a good time hanging out with the guy. And I think, you probably heard the 3 rule of was it you take a gig either for the money, for the music, or for the hang, right? If you can get 2 out of the 3, then that's people's. I was people always talk about that as their criteria for why they do a gig, but. And I guess to your point, it's you never know, just because there's an opportunity that doesn't happen with a connection. If you email somebody, they're not available or whatever. I think there's still that connection, because all right, if you call a club and they're like, oh, we can't, like, no, it's just not our thing. But I don't know, let's say somebody cancels and they like need someone to fill the date. And they're like, oh yeah, cool. Like he was a really nice, like I enjoyed communicating with him, you know, like he was a cool dude. Like he made the process easy for me. And I feel like if I book him, he's going to show up, he's going to be pro, because I have a last minute cancellation and I'm already stressed enough, and this person is going to bail me out and not add to my stress. So it's crazy how opportunities that don't happen right away can sometimes happen like later, and they just, it's like, wow, you know. So
Cool.
yeah, for sure.
All right, Peter.
Yeah.
Again, you know, stay safe, take it easy, and let's keep in touch. And thank you so much for your time and doing this. And it's really been enjoyable.
It's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to like when everything is up.
My journey.
Let me know. Yeah.
My journey.
Yeah. Sure.
But I will keep you abreast of what's going on.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, Peter.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.